The wind in Detroit didn't just blow, it screamed with a jagged, relentless frequency that found the gaps in your clothes and the cracks in your soul. Woodward Avenue, once the proud, neon-lit spine of a thriving city, was now a canyon of frozen asphalt and abandoned storefronts. Amara Vance sat on the steps of a closed pharmacy, her back pressed against the frosted glass of the door. She wasn't just cold anymore, she was becoming part of the architecture. Her burgundy sweater, once soft and warm, was now a leaden shroud, heavy with the weight of absorbed sleet and frozen rain. Her fingers were ghostly white, losing sensation as they wrapped tightly around the straps of a canvas backpack. Inside that bag was her entire life, a birth certificate, a high school diploma with honors she never got to use, and a single blurry Polaroid of two people laughing in the summer sun. Her parents, a memory from a life that felt like it belonged to a different person in a different century. Amara, VO. They say you don't feel the end coming, you just get sleepy, like the world is finally tired of watching you struggle and decided to tuck you in. My parents always told me to look for the light when things got dark, but tonight, the light is just ice reflecting off a dead city. I'm 28 years old, and I'm dying on a sidewalk while the man who stole my life is probably sipping scotch by a fireplace on Elmwood Drive. A low, rhythmic hum began to vibrate through the frozen pavement, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. Then came the lights, piercing, high-intensity LED headlamps cutting through the gray haze of the storm. 3 black SUVs, moving with a synchronized predatory grace, hissed to a halt at the curb. They were clean, armored, and expensive, a sharp contrast to the decaying street. The middle SUV's rear door opened with a soft mechanical whir. Ji-Hoo Thorne stepped onto the ice. He didn't rush. The ice didn't seem to dare make him slip. His charcoal wool overcoat was thick, perfectly tailored, and looked heavy enough to stop a bullet. He stood there for a long beat, his eyes scanning the perimeter with the sharp, total attention of a general. Finally, his gaze locked onto the small, shivering figure on the steps. He walked over, each footstep a heavy, deliberate thud. He crouched in front of her, his knees cracking in the silence. "Can you hear me?" Ji-Hoo asked. His voice was gravel and velvet. Amara's head lolled to the side, her eyes opened just a crack, dark brown and hazy with the onset of hypothermia. "Pharmacy's closed," she whispered, her teeth chattering so hard it was difficult to form the words. "Come back tomorrow." Ji-Hoo didn't flinch. "I'm not here for medicine, Amara." The sound of her name jolted her. She looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. He had a face that looked carved from stone, sharp monolid eyes, a straight nose, and a faint scar running across his right cheekbone. "How do you know my name?" she asked. "You're the only thing on this street that hasn't turned to stone yet. You can stay here and let the ice finish what Sang-wook started, or you can get in the car. I don't offer twice." Amara looked at his hand. It was large, scarred across the knuckles, and radiating a heat she could feel even through the freezing air. It was a cliff edge. She could jump, or she could fall. She reached out, her frozen fingers disappearing into his massive, warm palm. He pulled her up in one motion, as if she weighed nothing at all. As he guided her into the leather-scented, climate-controlled sanctuary of the SUV, the partition lowered. Minho, his head of security, looked back with a mask of professional concern. "Boss, the Port Authority meeting is in 20 minutes. The board won't wait. They're already looking for a reason to stall the contract." Then they can learn the value of patience. Amara needs warmth. "Take us to the penthouse, call the private medic, off the books, and tell Chonho to meet us there. We're not just saving a life tonight, we're opening an investigation." As the SUV pulled away, Amara huddled into the corner of the seat, the charcoal wool coat Ji-Hoo had draped over her, smelling of sandalwood and power. She watched the pharmacy disappear into the sleet, a ghost of the life she was leaving behind. If you are enjoying this intense Afro-Korean drama, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We are just getting started on the mystery of the Vance inheritance. The flashback hits with the cold precision of a blade. 3 days ago, the kitchen on Elmwood Drive was a masterpiece of mid-century design that felt more like a laboratory for psychological warfare. Sang-wook Vane sat at the mahogany table, meticulously cleaning a pair of gold cufflinks with a silk cloth. He was a man of absolute layers. Every word he spoke was a calculated move. Amara stood at the sink, her hands submerged in water so hot it turned her skin a raw, angry red. She was scrubbing a heavy copper pot that was already spotless. It was a nervous habit, a way to stay invisible, to stay quiet, to stay alive. "You missed a spot on the copper plating, Amara," Sang-wook said, his voice smooth and devoid of any warmth. "Sloth is a slow poison. My brother didn't raise you to be lazy, though I suppose the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree." Amara turned, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out the crumpled, water-stained letter she had intercepted from the mail that morning. She laid it on the pristine obsidian counter. "I'm 28 on Friday, Sang-wook," she said, her voice gaining a strength she didn't know she possessed. "I found a letter from the probate attorney regarding the Vance estate." Sang-wook's hand froze over the cufflinks. The silence in the kitchen became a physical weight. He laid the silk cloth down with a soft, ominous clink. $3 million, my parents' wrongful death settlement from the I-75 accident. The letter says if I don't appear in person by my 28th birthday to claim the trust, the funds transfer to the next of kin. That's you. That's why you told the university I couldn't afford the 3rd year of my med program. You needed me broke. You needed me here, scrubbing your floors until I forgot my own name. Sang-wook stood up. He didn't shout. He walked over to her, his presence looming, smelling of expensive sandalwood and the sterile scent of a hospital. He grabbed her arm, his grip like a vice, and looked at her with eyes that were as flat as a shark's. "I took you in when you were a broken brat in a hospital gown. I gave you a roof. I gave you a purpose. You think you're worth $3 million? You're a debt that hasn't been paid yet. Your parents were dreamers, Amara, and dreamers don't survive Detroit. They die in car wrecks because they aren't paying attention." He dragged her toward the front door, her boots slipping on the polished hardwood. He threw the door open, and the ice storm rushed in like a violent, uninvited guest. "You have until Friday morning," Sang-wook said, tossing her backpack onto the porch. "If you can make it to that courthouse, the money is yours. But look at you, you're a ghost, and ghosts don't have bank accounts. Don't bother coming back for your things. There's nothing left for you here." The door slammed, the deadbolt clicked. The sound was a finality that echoed in Amara's soul as she stood on the porch in a thin burgundy sweater. Present day, the penthouse. Amara woke to the sound of a digital hum. She wasn't on the steps anymore. She was in a bed with linens that felt like woven clouds. The room was massive, the walls made almost entirely of glass. Below her, the lights of Detroit looked like spilled jewels on black velvet. She sat up, gasping, her hands instinctively moving to her face. They were bandaged, the raw skin treated with a cooling salve. The door slid open with a whisper. Ji-hoo Thorne walked in. He had traded the charcoal overcoat for a black dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and intricate ink. He held a bowl of clear golden broth. "The doctor said your core temp was 92, Ji-hoo said, setting the bowl on the nightstand. "Another hour and your heart would have quit. My people have been watching Sang-wook for months, but we didn't think he'd move this early." "Who are you?" Amara asked, her voice raspy. "Why do you care about my heart?" Ji-hoo sat in the chair opposite her. "Because I'm the man who ensures Sang-wook doesn't win. He's been laundering your future to pay for his city contracts. He's been filing hardship claims against your estate for years. $50,000 for tutors you never had. $60,000 for medical needs you never received. He stole your education, Amara. In my world, we don't like thieves who hide behind silk ties." Amara looked at her bandaged hands. "He thinks I'm weak because I stayed. He doesn't realize I stayed because I was learning. I know every pill he takes. I know every contract he signs." Jihu's eyes sharpened. "Then you're not a ward. You're a weapon. Rest, Amara. Tomorrow, my attorney Chang Ho arrives. We have 72 hours to dismantle Sang-wook's world brick by brick." The next morning, the obsidian table in the penthouse was buried under stacks of manila folders and glowing tablets. Chan Ho, Jihu's lead counsel, sat across from Amara. He was a man who looked like he had never blinked in his life, his Korean features sharp and unreadable. He tapped a gold fountain pen against a ledger with a rhythmic, clinical precision. "Amara, the law is a machine," Chan Ho began. "It doesn't care about the tears you cried or the nights you spent freezing. It cares about input and output. Sang-wook Vane has spent 8 years perfecting the art of the ghost claim. Let's look at August 2023. He claimed $85,000 for advanced private tutoring in molecular biology for you. Did you have a tutor, Amara?" Amara leaned back, a bitter, cold smile playing on her lips. "My tutor was the back of a bleach bottle. I taught myself pharmacology and chemistry from the labels of the cleaning supplies Sang-wook kept under the sink. I spent that month painting the guest house in the rain because he didn't want the smell of fumes in the main house." Chan Ho scribbled a note. "Perfect. And the $60,000 for chronic asthma treatments in 2024? "I've never had asthma," Amara said firmly. "I run 5 miles every morning at dawn before the house wakes up. It's the only time I feel like a human being instead of a shadow." He was building a medical profile of a weak, sickly girl. He wanted to make sure that even if I did reach a judge, I'd look like a mental and physical wreck, unfit to manage an estate. Jihu, leaning against the glass wall with a coffee in hand, spoke without turning around. "He didn't just want your money, Amara. He wanted your erasure. If you're a sickly, incompetent ward, he gets to be the hero who manages your life forever. He was planning to have you committed to a state facility the day after the transfer was complete." The room went cold. Amara looked at her bandaged hands. The fury was there now, burning through the exhaustion. "I want him to lose everything. Not just the money. I want his reputation turned to ash." "Then we start with the city auditor," Jihu said. "Chan Ho, find the connection between Vane Logistics and the road maintenance contracts. If he's stealing from her, he's stealing from the taxpayers. We don't just win a lawsuit, we start a revolution." Later that afternoon, Jihu converted the secondary dining room into a makeshift lab. He had acquired everything Amara mentioned in her delirious sleep: a centrifuge, racks of chemical reagents, and a mass spectrometer. Amara moved through the room with a clinical grace that surprised even Jihu. She handled the vials with the precision of a master. "You're isolating a sedative derivative," Jihu noted, watching her. "For Kano's men? It's not mercy, it's efficiency. Dead men are easy to explain to the police. Unconscious men with their pockets full of Sang-wook's signed contracts, that's a conviction. This is isoflurane, modified for a high-pressure aerosol delivery. One breath and the central nervous system goes into standby." Meanwhile, across the city at the Rusty Hole, Sang-wook Vane sat in a grimy back booth. He looked out of place in his $4,000 suit, but the man across from him, Kano, didn't care. Kano was a tactical fixer, his face a map of scars and bad decisions. "Jihu Thorne has the girl," Sang-wook hissed. "His building is a fortress. I need her back by Thursday night. If she's not in my house by midnight, the codes for the river corridor are worthless to you." Kano grinned, revealing a gold canine tooth. "Jihu Thorne is a shadow, Sang-wook, but even shadows have to breathe. I'll get your girl, but if those codes don't work, you won't be going to court on Friday. You'll be going to the morgue." Wednesday night in Detroit was thick with the scent of impending rain and the electric hum of a city on the edge. Ji-Hoo Thorne decided it was time to move Amara Vance into the light. He didn't like the silence from Sang-wook's camp. He knew that when men like Vane went quiet, they were digging a grave. "We're going to the Obsidian," Ji-Hoo said, adjusting his watch. "It's a gala for the Port Authority. Every contractor in the city will be there, including Sang-wook. He needs to see that you aren't hiding. He needs to see that the ghost has a face." Amara wore a backless silk dress that Malik had provided, her natural hair coiled into an elegant architectural crown. Tucked into her hair was a silver pin that Ji-Hoo had given her, a subtle, lethal piece of jewelry. As they entered the gala, the room went silent. The high society crowd, a mix of old Detroit wealth and new money contractors, watched the mafia boss walk in with a woman who looked like a queen. Sang-wook was standing by the bar, his hand tightening around a glass of scotch. When his eyes met Amara's, he didn't look away. He raised his glass in a mock toast, a dark, cold smile playing on his lips. "He's calculating," Amara whispered, her eyes scanning the room. "He's not afraid." "Let him count," Ji-Hoo replied. "The math doesn't favor him anymore." Midway through the evening, a server approached Ji-Hoo with 2 glasses of vintage champagne. Amara's pharmacology training flared. She watched the server's hands. They were steady, but his shirt cuffs were damp, and he was avoiding eye contact. She looked at the champagne. There was a faint, almost imperceptible oily shimmer on the surface. "Don't," Amara said, her hand gripping Ji-Hoo's arm. "What is it?" "The wine. It's a lipid-based carrier for aconitine, a heart stopper. It's untraceable in a basic screen." Ji-Hoo turned to the server, his voice dropping an octave into a tone of pure, crystalline threat. "You have 5 seconds to tell me who handed you this tray, or you'll be drinking both of these right here." The server bolted, but Min-ho was already there, a shadow rising from the crowd. He pinned the man against a marble pillar with a sickening thud. The gala erupted into whispers. Sang-wook, seeing the plan fail, turned and disappeared through a service exit. Thursday night, the siege. 11:45 p.m. The Renaissance Center felt like a fortress, but the air was charged with ozone. The power in the penthouse flickered and then died, plunged into the red glow of emergency strobes. "Boss, they're inside," Ryan's voice crackled over the comms. "Sub-level 3, they bypassed the biometric lock on the service elevator. It's Kano. He's brought a team of 12. Ji-Hoo checked his weapon, the red strobes making him look like a demon. "Amara, safe room, now." "No," Amara replied, grabbing her gray canister from the lab. "Kano knows your security protocols. He doesn't know mine. If you can draw them into the east corridor, I'll do the rest." The sound of boots on marble echoed through the penthouse. Malik moved like a shadow, his team engaging Kano's men in a staccato of muzzle flashes and suppressed fire. Amara slipped into the HVAC maintenance ducts, the cold metal biting into her skin. She reached the primary intake, her hands precise as she slotted the canisters into the fan. "Malik, they're in position. Close the fire doors." The sound of the heavy steel doors slamming was a concussive boom. Amara triggered the gas. A plume of white vapor filled the east corridor. Elena watched through the vents as the mercenaries began to stagger, their tactical precision dissolving into a chaotic struggle for air. Kano was the last to fall, his fingers clawing at the steel handle before his eyes rolled back. Ji-Hoo found her later in the vents, his face streaked with dust. "Kano is down, non-lethal. They'll wake up in a holding cell." He looked at her, and for the first time, the boss looked at her not as a ward, but as a partner. "Tomorrow, we finish this." Friday morning in Detroit arrived with a hard blue sky and a cold that felt earned. The Wayne County Probate Court was a cathedral of gray stone and high-stakes silence. Sang-wook Vane sat at the defense table, looking like a man who had already been convicted. He looked up as Amara entered, wearing a charcoal power suit that screamed authority. "I'm not a tragedy, Sang-wook," Amara said as she walked past him. "I'm the consequence." She took the stand. For the next hour, she dismantled Sang-wook's 8-year facade. She spoke about the lie-burned hands and the nights spent studying pharmacology by the light of a refrigerator. Chan-ho presented the evidence, the fraudulent audits, the evidence of the poisoned wine, and the thermal footage of Kano's failed breach. Judge Miller didn't even hesitate. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. The Vance estate is restored to Amara Vance in full, the judge declared. Sang-wook Vane, you are remanded into custody pending a grand jury investigation into grand larceny and attempted murder. Bailiffs, take him. As Sang-wook was led away in handcuffs, he leaned in to Amara. His voice was a frantic, ragged whisper. You think you've won? Look in your father's Bible, Amara, page 112. The insurance slip. Look at the signature for the witness. You've let a wolf into your house to kill a fox. Your protector is the son of the man who planned the crash. The twist. Sunset over the Detroit River. Amara stood in the empty foyer of the Elmwood house. Malik stood on the porch, watching the street. Amara held her mother's Bible, her fingers shaking as she turned the thin, onion skin pages. She found it. Page 112. A yellowed slip of paper from October 14, 1998. The witness signature wasn't Sang-wook. It was Ji-hoo Thorne, Sr. Amara's face went white. She looked at Ji-hoo. Your father witnessed the insurance adjustment, she whispered. 3 days before my parents died. Why? Ji-hoo stepped into the foyer, his face a mask of profound regret. Because my father was a monster, Amara. He and Sang-wook were cleaning the Vance accounts back in '98. Your parents found out. They were going to go to the feds. I've been looking for you for 20 years to finish the debt. The $3 million, that was just the interest. The real inheritance is under this house. He pulled out a heavy brass key. Suddenly, the door kicked open. Min-ho rushed in, his face bloodied. Boss, Sang-wook, the transport van was hit. He's gone. Rescued by the old guard. They're coming here. Ji-hoo looked at Amara. The Part 1 conclusion was here. Elena, Part 2 of this story doesn't end in a courtroom. It ends in the blood. They want what's under these boards. Amara looked at the key, then at the floorboards she had scrubbed for 8 years. Then give me the key, she said, her voice turning to ice. I'm tired of being the only one who doesn't know the secrets in my own house. Did you enjoy this feature-length Afro-Korean drama? The secrets of the Vance family are just beginning to surface. If you want to see the epic conclusion in Part 2, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter of the Woodward Convoy.